Alright, let's talk monoblocks, specifically the Emotiva HC1. You have likely seen systems put together with monoblocks, but let's not assume everyone watching understands why. Monoblocks are two separate amplifiers, one for the left channel and one for the right channel. Two monoblocks are required for a stereo configuration. Three or more could be used in a home theater application. So what advantage does a monoblock have over stereo amps? Well, the key point would be dedicated power supplies per channel, better signal isolation between the channels. Other points that carry merit are less heat to deal with, being that the amp channels are separated, generally lighter to carry and move around, and of course, it just looks cool to have two. You could also argue that it limits the painful discussions on speaker cable length if you place the amps directly behind the speakers, but then you're just opening yourself up for the longer speaker cable versus longer interconnects discussion, and we're just not going to go there today. I want to take a quick moment to ask your assistance. I would truly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. As a small creator, every subscription is a big deal, and it makes a difference in my ability to produce future content. But enough with that, let's get back to the review. Looking specifically at the Emotiva HC1, we have a discrete dual differential amp that utilizes a Class AB amplifier section mated to a Class H power supply for efficiency. During low power levels, the output state operates on a relatively low power voltage to assist in minimizing power consumption as well as standby power loss. As the demand for power increases, it switches seamlessly over to a high voltage rail to ensure that the signal passes cleanly, efficiently, and without clipping. The process continuously happens in real time and will lead to cooler operation, better efficiency, and ideally longer component life. The amp is rated at 300 watts into 8 ohms and 600 into 4, so it's certainly no slouch. In fact, finding more for less is next to impossible, outside of maybe something like a Crown that has less of an audiophile approach in design. While you could save some money and pick up a XPA2 Gen 3 and have similar but not quite the 4 ohm performance of the HC1, you won't benefit from the dual power supplies that really make these tick. The power is there with either option, but owning monoblocks is similar to owning a sports car. You may not always need it, but when it calls for it, the power is there, and you know you just want it. Because each channel has its own amplifier and its own dedicated power supply, you won't ever have to worry about interactions between the channels or running a little bit short on power during a demanding music passage. It will just simply work. Just working is exactly how I would describe the HC1. The point of all this power is sound control. A well-designed amp won't massage the music that is already there. It will only amplify what is given. If you find after adding an amp your sound has changed, it may just be that the newfound power has enabled your speakers to perform to their true intended outputs. Some speakers need more, and giving them the wattage they crave can really open them up to new performance levels. You may have noticed that particularly inefficient speakers don't really open up or come alive until you get the volume up on a smaller amp. A more powerful amp will be able to control the drivers with ease and possibly give you exactly what you're looking for. The designers of the HC1 have ensured you won't find a change in the sound of the music. It's a very neutral sound that is transparent to the source. Nothing objectable here. This amp is a very honest amp, and it does exactly what it's designed to do. Let's look at the front of this unit and all the features. Okay, we're done. No, just kidding. But really, we won't have a lot to discuss here. It's a typical look for Emotiva, a simple box design, all black. Let's just be happy in 2022 that it's not called the Stealth series with an upcharge. That's not like Emotiva though. They are generally very consistent on designs outside of removing the silver accents years back. We also won't see any price gouging here. We have a power button in the front bottom center and a status LED towards the top center. The LED lights are also able to be disabled in the rear, which is very nice and an appreciated feature that they added. As we look at the sides, we notice there are no cooling vents. That's because they wanted to provide placement options. If you don't plan to have these separated beside their specific channel, they can actually operate right next to each other. They even sell a bracket to connect them. As we scan the top, you can see where all the cooling will occur, as we have an ample amount of venting. The rear of the amplifier offers a little more. Starting on the far left, we have a trigger in and out. This is so you can tie the amps together and have one trigger the other one on. Cables for that are included as well. Below that, we have the status LED switch. This is what I mentioned earlier to disable the LEDs on the front of the unit. Below that is the circuit breaker, which is used in place of a fuse. I prefer this, and I feel it's actually a good design here. And finally, there's the power cord connection, as well as the switch. Moving to the right, we have two connection methods, RCA on the top and XLR below it, with a switch to toggle between the two. At the bottom right, there is a well-built pair of speaker outputs that can handle the usual connections offered. I paired this with my KLH Model 5s and noticed a bump in performance, especially on the low end. Previously, I had this connected to my Audiolab 6000A, which is a great integrated. It's still running through the Audiolab, but only as a preamp paired with my HC1s. The 6000A produces 50 watts per channel into 8 and 75 watts into 4. So we have a hefty jump in power here, and it appears the Model 5s appreciate it. When listening to Chlorine off the 21 Pilots album, the bass note carries a bit more weight. At high volume, you can get what I best describe as more control. Like I said earlier, more wattage won't show its benefits at all times. Sometimes volume or demanding passages will bring it to light easily, but don't expect night and day differences. Instead, look for the small details in the music. And it always helps to be very familiar with the test tracks that you're using. Moving back to the 90s, I demoed Spiderwebs by No Doubt. Once again, no struggles. The bass line flows and the highs carry the authority you would expect. Really, your only limits with this type of amplifier and speaker is a threshold of volume that you will still enjoy. Distortion won't enter the conversation. Next, I connected to the Polk LSIM 705, which tends to like a little more power to really come alive. The results didn't surprise me. The HC1 drove them without hesitation. Control was there, soundstage was great, and instruments were clearly defined. I figured this was as good a time as any to put on some Metallica. Wherever I May Roam was the song of choice. The bass kicks were hard, they didn't hang in the air, everything hit like it should. Next, I wanted to turn it down to see how this amp behaves with lower volumes. I put on Mr. Jones by Counting Crows. Even at low volumes, the low frequencies made themselves present. The sound was neutral, clean, and easy listening throughout all of the ranges. Oftentimes people see large wattages from an amp and they focus too much on the high volume performance. Dial it back for a bit and make sure your hardware matches your level of expectations at all volumes. As much as I like it a bit louder, half the time I'm listening to it at easy listening levels anyways. I would also like to point out there is no hiss. Completely silent in between tracks or while no signal is being sent through the speakers. This seems like an obvious one. Ideally, we don't hear any hiss, but the reality is some amps do produce it and many are sensitive to that. We're good to go here though. To wrap things up, we have a power amp that comes in well below the price point of its competition when comparing amps of similar design and power. If you're into monoblocks, this might be a good option if you want uncompromised power output while not completely breaking the bank. Emotiva is well known for value products as they are a direct-to-consumer manufacturer, so keep it in mind, check it out, and it may just surprise you. Well, thanks for watching today, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.